Hello everybody and welcome back to the flight deck. I've been asked a few times about where to find certain information on charts and how to look up certain things for takeoff and landing and how to get around the airports. So I decided I would do a series of tutorial videos that would show you where to find information on the different charts that we use when flying in Microsoft Flight Simulator, and more specifically when flying on VATSIM. Now, a couple points to make out before we start. I am not a trained IFR pilot. My flying was only ever done VFR, so I've never been formally trained on how to read and interpret these charts. But I have learned from real pilots. I have learned from years of simming experience and reading through them and asking questions. So this is how I read them and the information I get from them. I may not know everything that's on these charts, but I know enough to get by in the sim, and I know where to find, pretty much all of the information you're going to need to successfully fly in Flight Sim and on VATSIM as well. So we're going to break this series up into a number of parts. We'll cover the charts that you use when you're at an airport for both your departure and arrival procedures on the ground. We'll do another one on your departure. We'll do one on the arrivals, and then another one for a typical ILS landing. As I am from the Toronto area, we will be using the charts from Pearson International Airport, the big major Toronto airport. So the information, it will be specific to that airport. However, the general layout and everything is identical for airports around the world. So I hope you find this interesting and informative. If you do, please consider subscribing, hitting the like button on the videos. Leave a comment below if you want more of these types of tutorials. I always take that into consideration when coming up with these ideas, and we will take a look at doing them moving forward. So without further ado, let's get into this video. Alright, the first chart we're going to get into is the airport chart, which shows you a basic diagram of the airport. As you can see, there is a diagram and then there's some information that's contained around it. We will now go into detail on where you can find information specific to this airport on the chart itself. We'll start with the top section here. This is standard across most charts. This tells you what airport you're at, the name of it, and more importantly, it has a date on it, and I'll tell you why that's important in a minute. But starting on the left hand side of the highlighted section, you can see the airport identifier, the CYYZ, and that is the ICAO airport code for Toronto Pearson International Airport. Underneath that, you'll find your airport elevation, in this case 569 feet. And below that is your latitude and longitude coordinates for the airport. Over on the right, you'll see that these are Jepson charts, and it says Toronto, Ontario, so it gives you the name of the city the airport belongs to. Again, directly under that, it says Toronto Pearson International, so it'll be the actual name of the airport. Some cities have more than one airport, so you'll need that information. It has in the little oval box, it says 10-9. That is chart number 10-9 of the set of charts for this airport. And to the left of that, you'll see a date. It says 16 April 21. That date is very important. That is how pilots, when they're referring to charts, know that you are looking at the same chart. So you would say that, okay, we have the ground chart out for Toronto. It is chart 10-9 dated 16 April 21, and your first officer would look at his charts and go, okay, I've got my ground chart, it's 10-9, and I also have 16 April 21. Charts change constantly. Not all airports will change at all times, but in general, charts are always changing. Things get added, procedures change, runways are closed, all that type of information is put in here. And you want to make sure that not only are you running the latest chart, but you are running the most recent chart. So that is where you would find that information. Moving on to the next section, this is where you find your basic frequency list. There is a greater list that's contained within other publications, but this has your basic information. So as you can see, it has departure ATIS and has 2 frequencies listed there. It has your data communications for the computer generated ATIS or computer transmitted ATIS. Toronto clearance. When you go over to apron advisory, it has the different aprons where the aircraft parks, and that's where your gates are. So it's got north apron, south apron, pad control, I believe that's the de-icing facilities, and apron tow coordinator. So if aircraft have to be towed around the aprons, that's who you would call. Under that, back over to the left, it's got ground frequencies and tower frequencies. Has London radio, which is for London, Ontario, located to the west. It's fairly close, which is why they include that frequency in case you need it. And Toronto departure frequencies. So it's a quick, handy reference in case you have to look the frequencies up here off the main chart. This section here on the right are operational notes. And you can see, just giving it a read through, there's certain information about how things work at this airport. For example, the A340, 777s, and A380 discretionary oversteering required at all intersections. So it's telling them certain things. Because of the size of the aircraft, they're going to have to steer a certain way. Couple notes down, it says see charts 10.9b and 10.9b1 for additional taxiway data and notes. That is for things like low visibility taxiing and super heavy aircraft, what taxiways are open and what taxiways are not open. Certain information about certain taxiways. And if you go down to the bottom of that section, it has wingspan restrictions. So certain aircraft may not be able to go down certain taxiways because their wings may be too wide and there's obstructions. So very general information is held within this section of the chart. And in this section we have the main diagram of the airport. It shows the terminals, it shows all the runways, and it shows all the taxiways, as well as other major buildings on the airfield. It also has information such as the red markings, the HS, and a number. I'll tell you what those are in a minute. And some other stuff. It has de-icing operations and tells you where to refer to that for more information. It has high density runway operation information. If you look up in the upper right corner of this section, it shows you your lengths for remaining. So if they say you're going off on runway 5 from the Juliet 2 intersection, you know, how much distance do I have for takeoff? It'll tell you, and you'll be able to calculate, can I do that or not, based on the type of aircraft that I have. So this is a general overview chart of the airport, and it lets you see where you have to go. So when you hear the controller say you're parked at Terminal 1 and you're going to runway 24 right, and the controller comes on and says, you know, you're cleared to taxi Alpha Lima, Alpha, Delta, Delta Victor, and hold short runway 24 right on Delta, you can follow out and see where you're supposed to go on the taxiways and find your way down there, especially when it becomes a little bit more longer and convoluted taxi instructions. So this is page 2 of the general airport information. Once again, we will go through it section by section, taking a look at what it says. So again, on the top, it's got the basic information, so you know what chart you're looking at. CYYZ, Jepson charts, Toronto, Ontario, Toronto Pearson International Airport, and you'll see it says for the page, it's 10-9 Alpha. So this is page 2 of the 10-9 section, and again the date 16 April 2021. So the first section here is some general information. As you can see, it says pilots must keep transponders on at all times when maneuvering on the airport, turned on prior to brake release and on arrival, on until final engine shutdown. Transponders that do not have a transponder code issued by ATC must squawk 1000 when taxiing. So this is pretty basic. When you get your clearance and that and you're ready to go, they want transponders on at this airport. All airports are different, but for Toronto they want them on. So before you get pushed back and you're ready to go, boom, transponder comes on and it stays on. Same as landing. You do not shut it down until you turn the engines off. Under that, we've got runway information. So we're going to take a look here, and there's a few things it wants you to be aware of. So you'll see it gives you information about the glide slope, the threshold, the landing distance beyond those points, takeoff distances, runway widths, and stuff like that. So it also tells you, let's say we're going to be using runway 23 for an example through this series of videos. It tells you what kind of lights the runway has, what the PAPI lights are, what your visibility or what your distances are from the certain points. And you can see that it lists it for every single runway, and it's reciprocal the other way. And it gives you all the information that you're going to need. And it also, if you look at the part underneath, you'll see it says for the PAPI lights, it says PAPI lights on runway 23, PAPI-L, that's PAPI lights to the left. It has a number 1. You look at number 1, it says it's a 3-degree angle set up for aircraft with a wheel-to-eye height of 45 feet. So that's telling you exactly how those PAPI lights are set up. So you remember where I told you we'll talk about those HS and then the numbers. Those are runway incursion hotspots. They're not holding points. They are hotspots. They're places they've had trouble. So they are indicating certain areas of taxiways that there's been issues. So let's take a look at hotspot number 4. So it says exiting runway 24 left onto taxiway Delta 6. Aircraft failed to hold short of and incurred onto runway 26 left, 24 right. So if you're landing on runway 24 left, in order to get to the terminals, you have to cross 24 right. But you do not cross an active taxiway without expressed permission from the tower. So they're saying at this point, when aircraft would come off on that taxiway, Delta 6, aircraft would go through the hold short line and actually be pushed out and be violating the sanctity of runway 24 right. And that is an issue. So be careful at this point. And it's the same for all the others. There are warnings that, hey, it's tight, you don't have a lot of room to play here, and aircraft are constantly busting it. And you do not want to get the notice to call the tower once you're in your gate, because that means you've done something and they want to talk to you about it, and they may be filing paperwork on you, which you do not want. So for this set of the chart, this gives us a little bit more information again. It tells you specific information for all of the runways. So if we go over onto the right side of this side and we look at runway 23, it tells you there's a tower, some type of tower, 595, well, it goes up to 595 feet above mean sea level, approximately 0.1 nautical miles past departure end of the runway, 650 feet left of the runway center line. So when you take off, when you get just, a tenth of a mile out, on your left, you're going to see a tower. So it's just a little bit of a warning. Hey, be aware that it's there. It also gives you information on the minimums for this runway, for runway visual rate or reference. So it is saying that for authorized air carriers, this is the section on the left, authorized air carriers on a Class C aircraft, so the Airbus A320 for example, you need a RVR of 12, that's 1,200 feet, or a quarter mile. All other aircraft need 2,600 feet, or half a mile. So this is for things like haze, fog. How far do you need to be able to see down the runway in order to be able to safely use it? So that's the information, and it's listed for every single runway we have here at Toronto. And then at the very bottom on the right side, it has your departure climb rates in feet per minute. So if you have a ground speed of 160 knots, and you have to be climbing at 400 feet per nautical mile, you just look down at the bottom, you have to have a vertical velocity, a vertical climb rate of 1,700 feet per minute. And this comes into effect when you have obstacle clearance. So if you're flying in mountainous areas or really built up areas, you may see stuff saying the aircraft must be able to maintain a certain rate. That's so you're not interfering with the buildings. This is where that information would be listed. So how do you know what gate you're at? Well, all the airports will also come with parking charts. If you have multiple terminals, they may be split into multiple charts, or if you have terminals on, say, the north side of the runway, or north side of the airport, and then you have terminals on the south side of the airport, they may be broken up that way. But this is showing the main passenger terminals. There's two of them, Terminal 1 and Terminal 3. And it's also showing the gates you have for them, and the taxiways on the aprons themselves. So once again, let's take a look at the different sections of this chart, and we'll get into it a little bit more. So on the top again, you have the standard information. You have the runway identifier, the city, the airport name. You also have a new note under where it says Jeppesen. You have effective 5 November. So there's obviously a change, and this is when the chart was effective. So it may come out in a little bit in advance, and it says as of 5 November, this is what we're using. You see it says chart 10-9 Bravo in the little oval there, and then beside it a date of 30 October 2020. So you can see this chart's a little bit more dated, but it is the most up-to-date one, and it did go into effect about 15 days after it was published. Now, if we look at the very bottom of the chart on the left, the way it's, because it's printed sideways, you'll notice in the border it says changes, asphalt apron surface noted. So they've obviously made a change to the apron, and I think it's where it has that construction section on the right. So that is the change, and some of the charts will show you what changes have been made. But let's take a look at the main body of the chart now. So here's the main body of the chart. We will take a look at a couple of the sections, and then obviously you can freeze the video and read it on your own to see what all the notes say. So around the border, where the little hash marks are, it says W097-37. Those are part of your latitude and longitude coordinates. So it's showing you where everything lies out here within the airport and the world itself. There's a separate page that would also come after this that would list every single gate and every single full coordinate for the gate. So you know when you're sometimes asked to enter that in for the inertial systems, where are you, depending on the aircraft, that is where you'd find out the information for each individual specific gate. On the upper right, you'll see it's got two sets of frequencies, north apron and south apron. So it's telling you what frequency you've got to be on for when you're moving around there. Underneath it says runway incursion hotspots. We discussed that in the last one. You can see a couple down at the bottom right, HS8 and HS9, and then you go back and read the description and see what the issues are. It's got a little bit of an aircraft of a legend that shows you where the aircraft hold points are. shows you where the taxi lanes are, and then it also shows you where the lights are. Those are the green lights that you would follow on the taxiways. Shows you where they start and where they're located. And then it gives you the information. It gives you the hold points. It gives you where the taxi route go. It gives you the gate information. It tells you what frequencies you're to be on depending on where on the apron you are. And it gives you some notes. So if we look down here right above where it says terminal number 1, there's an arrow that's pointing to the left, or sorry, to the right around the terminal down to where it says 10 Delta. And if you read that, it says outer north loop between 9er Charlie, 9er Delta, 10 Delta, and 10 Charlie. So you can see it's got that extra loop on top. Restricted to an aircraft with wingspan of 118 feet or less. So if the aircraft you're flying has a wingspan of greater than that, you are not permitted to use that because you're going to be too close to the equipment, the gates, all that type of stuff there. So these are the things you have to know about your aircraft, the sizes of it, where you're going, where you're taxiing to. It also gives you the hold point. So if you were, say, coming out of say you were pushing back out of gate 122 on the left side of terminal 1, and they said, yeah, push and start approved, push back facing south. So you'd push back, you may be sitting somewhere around the 6 Delta mark, and then they may say, right, this is the apron controller, may say taxi to and hold at 6 Bravo. Well, this will tell you where that stop point is so that you can come down here and then stop there for whatever reason they've got you to taxi. So it gives you all the information that you're going to need for various parts of the taxiing around the aprons, and what gate is what and where you're actually sitting on the airfield. And that's going to do it for the airport charts. Now, these charts are used at both ends of your flight, so you got to remember, you will start off with the gate chart and the detailed charts of where you're parked. You then move out to the general airport chart for taxiing out to the airport you're going to get into, and then we'll move on to the next phase in the next video. But when you arrive at the airport, you then take your general airport chart, you look at the taxi instructions, where they're sending you to, what apron you're going to, where you have to go, and then you look at your gate chart and it'll show you specifically what gate you're going to and the restrictions and everything that's in place there. So I hope this has really helped you out finding your general information for the airports you are flying out of and landing into. And we will join you on the next one where we will examine the departure charts from this airport. Thanks for watching. Once again, if you like the video, please consider subscribing, giving it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below. Always read the comments, and we will see you on the next one. Bye for now.